Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
Interesting comment that was left on the video I did about a year ago called Borderlines Use You, They Do Not Love or Attach to You. That is also a podcast episode on this podcast that you can find. So what the commenter said was, the word you're looking for is narcissist. Well, hey, commenter. This has been going on a lot on my channel recently. I've been getting gaslit, pushed back against in many ways by people with BPD or maybe some others. And I think this person is just an outright, maybe they have BPD, maybe they don't, but they're quite the BPD apologist. In the whole video, or if you listen on the podcast episode, Borderlines Use You, They Do Not Love or Attach to You, which I just quickly had a pretty quick go through, re-listen. No, the word that I was looking for, the word that I was using was borderline, especially untreated borderlines. I wasn't looking for the word narcissist, so thanks for the gaslighting commenter, but no thanks. And then the commenter says 70% of people with borderline personality disorder were SA'd as children. And even in the diagnosis, they are shamed instead of being viewed as someone who has complex trauma. Okay, well, hold the phone there. I don't know if this person has BPD or they're just making excuses here. So 70% of people with BPD were SA'd as children. In the diagnosis, they're shamed instead of being viewed as someone who has complex trauma. No, I don't think anything about diagnosing people with BPD when it's appropriate is to shame them. They might feel shamed, but it's not to shame them. And here's the other thing. Commenter is trying to say that, BPD, it's not really a thing. It's just complex trauma. Well, there is complex adverse experience for many, many people with BPD, but they don't have CPTSD. It is not the same or a replacement for a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, which unfortunately is one of the most stigmatized diagnoses that a person can get, unfortunately. And so then the idea of they should be being viewed instead as somebody who has complex adverse experience, which any child would develop through SA. It is, quote, someone with the fear of being abandoned, unquote. If anything, they're likely to become too attached to you than not attached at all. Well, that's interesting because some people with BPD will overly, not really attach, right? But seem like they're more attached to you. But that isn't really attachment either. It's neediness. So some people with BPD are more needy, more clingy, which this person wants to describe as, quote, more attached, unquote. Not really, but a different presentation. And then the person says, I'm sorry you had a bad experience dating someone with borderline. And I don't know if they're talking to me or everybody else, because I don't mention, I have had a couple of relationships with people with BPD. Yes, I have. But I didn't mention it in that video. So anyway, who knows who they're talking to. But I'm sorry you had a bad experience dating someone with borderline. I think they're just guessing that because of what information is actually sharing in the podcast video or the podcast episode. That borderlines just use you and they don't attach to you. And a commenter says, yeah, sorry that you had a bad experience dating someone with BPD. That doesn't give you the right to put millions of survivors of abuse in a stigmatizing box of shame so you can have a black and white understanding of reality and take no responsibility for your relationship that it didn't go the way you wanted it to. Whoa, say what? Aha. So whether they're talking to me or they're talking to like everybody else who's been in a relationship with somebody with BPD and that's a general you or whatever, doesn't matter at this point. But they are claiming that I, and or maybe all of you out there who might be writing on the internet and or commenting on my channel, other channels, that you've been hurt by somebody with BPD. So they're claiming that, oh, sorry if you just had a bad experience. So minimization there. And then it doesn't give you the right, and I guess that's me because I was the one talking, right? It doesn't give you the right to put millions of survivors like of childhood adverse experience in a stigmatizing box of shame. But you know what? This person is trying to equate people with BPD like they are the same as other people who are SA survivors. That's not true, because there were a lot of people who have been SA'd in childhood. I have to say it that way for YouTube, okay, not for the podcast. But a lot of people have been SA'd in their childhoods. They don't all have BPD. And there's quite a difference. I'm someone who went through that in my childhood with at least 5 different individuals and at different times, with both parents. And paternal grandmother, doctor when I was young. So one wasn't related to me, but the other 4 were. And that's something that people can heal and recover from, as I did decades ago. I have all kinds of compassion for anybody who's been through that experience in their childhood, whether they have BPD or not. So the person says, I'm putting millions of survivors in a stigmatizing box of shame. Well, no. It really seems like this commenter feels like they might be or have been put somehow in a stigmatizing box of shame. Has nothing to do with anything I said. I really wonder what you think of these comments or when you hear these comments, because even some people who are with a person with BPD right now, going through a lot of tumult and on the roller coaster ride, etc., and the agony of it all, may defend their person with BPD by thinking that I'm doing what this commenter thinks I'm doing, or we're all doing, whichever, if it's a general you or the it means me. I don't think anybody who's been hurt by somebody with BPD, or myself just giving information to people who've been hurt by BPD, I've shared at other points in time my experience with, BPD, the 4 core traits that I had, the healing, the recovery journey. I've been recovered for close to 40 years now, no symptomology or anything. So when I'm talking about what people with BPD do, I kind of know it from the inside out, although I didn't have all the traits or all of the severe intensity, whatever, but there's no such thing as BPD light. And then I had a couple of relationships with cluster Bs, a couple of people with BPD, and then also a person with BPD, NPD who was an alcoholic. And my parents are both cluster Bs. Well, and other people in the family of origin as well. But my point is, this person sounds like they're still very much a capital B victim, and they want to minimize BPD, which is really a dangerous thing to do. They probably have BPD. They start off by saying the word you're looking for is narcissist. And to the commenter, and people have been commenting like this on my channel a lot in different ways. I use words that I choose carefully because it's what I'm talking about. So I'm not looking for another word. Thank you. Oh, yeah, and the sort of, sorry you had a bad experience dating someone with borderline. Are they sorry, really? No, they're not, really. I mean, for you, for me, for whoever they meant by you, like the general you, I think, too. But it doesn't give, I guess, me as the person talking, or anyone else as somebody writing online or whatever about your experience with somebody with BPD, doesn't give us or me or whatever they were saying, the right to put millions of survivors of, just abuse by itself. Yeah, not BPD now. In stigmatizing box of shame. And then they say, so you can have a black and white understanding of reality and take no responsibility for why your relationship didn't go the way you wanted it to. Well, here's a person probably with BPD who's taking no responsibility for why relationship that they've been in or whatever don't go the way that maybe somebody else has told them, I can't do this. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. I don't know. They sound like they obfuscate personal responsibility quite well. And they're probably projecting about this box of shame. And they're projecting when they say that you can have, so I or anybody else who's been in a relationship with somebody with BPD can have a black and white understanding of reality and take no responsibility. Doesn't that sound really BPD-ish? Like a lot? Like big projection? The only thing I agree with this commenter is when they said, and take no responsibility for why your relationship didn't go the way you wanted it to. Well, that's, I agree with that to a degree. I mean, this sounds like a borderline not taking any responsibility, but people with codependency need to realize you have a little bit of responsibility, not for what they did, not for how they've hurt you, etc. But when things don't work out, there is a component to when things don't work out the way that you hoped, the way that you wanted, that you have to take some responsibility in your own healing recovery. But just for you and your own healing recovery, going no contact, etc., not taking any responsibility for the person with BPD or the way that they treated you. Then the commenter continues, why don't you put the shame on the people who hurt kids like that? Well, I don't know if they're just talking to me or not, but I would just say for me, I'm not putting shame on anybody with BPD, and I don't think that that's the intention of others out there like yourself. You may have written somewhere, asked questions somewhere, said some things that, you have a right to say how you feel. And people with BPD, well, they get all triggered and they're hurt and they don't think that you do have a right to say what you need to say. Because, it's all about hurting them. But still, what about the ex, the partner, the adult child or the child of the borderline or the friend or the sibling? They don't get what they do to people untreated unless until a lot of treatment. So this person is sounding like a total BPD apologist. And the only thing I agree with is that, yes, other people in relationships with people with BPD have to look at why are you there? How did you get there? What do you need to do to heal and take care of yourself and not accept BPD ways of relating and causing you all kinds of stress and worse and agony, and you kind of take that as somehow they can still love you. That's your part to deal with, but not how the people with BPD act, etc. So I think that society does put a lot of shame on people, parents, who hurt kids in this way. Definitely. Let me just read the sentence all at once because the commenter says, why don't you put the shame on the people who hurt kids like that who are all narcissists? Well, that's an erroneous statement also. Are there lots of narcissists who are going to essay their children or a child, horribly enough? Yeah, but not everybody that does that is a narcissist. And then the commenter says, instead of the ones who got hurt when they were children and didn't get any love or taught any coping skills. Well, it's not, see, that's a black and white proposition right there by this person who I think has BPD, is, well, why don't we just shame and all these people that did this to kids? Well, of course, I think society does shame them because they're all narcissists, says this probably borderline. And instead of, we're all, or I am, or everybody, I don't know, the general you, is putting things on the ones who got hurt as kids and didn't get any love or taught any coping skills. I mean, that's a typical black and white argument from somebody with BPD or a BPD apologist, because lots of people get hurt in childhood. Lots of people have codependency. That's an adverse childhood experience response and way to cope. And it's self-abandoning. And then there are people that, will have BPD and that kind of history. And then there's people who probably have at least codependency, but might have been SA'd and don't have BPD or NPD, and they're doing better in their lives, though that really needs time, attention, and therapy to work through as well. Well, I'll just say, I've been through that, and what I see this person doing is a great big giant wah about that. Now, it's terrible. I mean, I am a survivor of SA in childhood. It's awful. It's terrible. Nobody deserves it. Nobody should ever do that to a child like it was done to me, like it was obviously done maybe to this person or someone they care about. And of course we don't accept that. That is totally unconscionable, horrible behavior. And it does wound and damage children greatly. And no matter if they have BPD or NPD or, with codependency, everybody's going to really have a need for therapy to go and heal childhood SA. Absolutely. And as somebody who went through it, the difference between me and whoever this person is talking about themselves and or people with BPD, etc., as if narcissists never got SA'd in their childhood. Lots of them did. I'm not saying they all did. But it's not just something that we see in people with BPD who this person wants to argue. It's, CPTSD basically. And that's not right either. I don't know why so many people with BPD are so stuck on the stigma of it all, eh? Like, that's a good way to stay a victim. And as somebody who healed and recovered from SA in my childhood decades ago, it was painful. It was a horrible experience. It was awful to go through. Awful to go through the abuse. Awful to go through the experience of healing. I mean, great when I got through it, but, really hard going through it. But the difference here, and, there's lots of people with codependency. I've had lots of clients who've been with a person with BPD, and they're trying to, break that betrayal bond, etc., in working with me and in the process of healing and recovery. They've been SA'd in childhood as well. And so it's not just a borderline thing, not something that just somebody can, with BPD, take and say, what this person is essentially saying is we are the real innocent, holier than thou, come on, really good people, but we got SA'd in childhood, so you can't hold us responsible for our behavior in adulthood, no matter how friggin' crazy making it is. And that type of thing. We should just eat. This person thinks all all people that commit SA are narcissists, which is not true. And then he said, why aren't people putting the shame on them instead of the ones who got hurt when they were children? Well, I got hurt when I was a child. Did you get hurt when you were a child? Maybe you have codependency and you're not, really kind of recalling, or you've kind of suppressed that. Maybe you've disavowed that and it's been repressed into your unconscious mind, because in therapy, often when I'm working with clients, we have to bring a lot of unconscious things from the past that have been repressed and disavowed back to consciousness to be able to heal and work them through. Yeah, and when they were children, and in one hand, to some people like this, I want to go, but of course I have compassion and empathy for any child that didn't get any love or taught any coping skills, because I was a child like that. I didn't get any love or taught any coping skills from two cluster B parents with the different comorbidities, but both narcissists and alcoholics. The key thing about all of this, and why ever this commenter left this comment, it did, because the word I was looking for was narcissist. No, it wasn't. And there is a difference between people with BPD and people with NPD, but there's nothing massively exclusive to people with BPD, except that, well, there's a couple of differences, but except the prognosis for people who will seek treatment with BPD and to heal any SA from childhood as well. But rather than do that, people like this person just come along and throw this stuff at me, and or if that was I think it was like me as the person, in the video or in this case, but in the podcast episode too, or I think it was also meant for the you out there in general, everybody who's hurting, writing about, talking about your experiences and your feelings, like you're absolutely allowed to. But people with BPD, again, this message, the undertone, the undercurrent to this person's comment is, oh, but we got so hurt. This is what happened to us. How dare you think that it's just, BPD, and it's so stigmatizing, and you're shoving us in a shame box. And then, I mean, come on. This is where these people don't get how they're affecting other people. They don't know themselves. They don't get that to be a victim of childhood, that type of adverse experience, doesn't make you special, doesn't give you special powers to abuse and hurt others, knowingly or unknowingly, and think it's okay because you were so victimized in childhood. Because let's face it, more of us than not been victimized in childhood to one extent or another, and in a similar way as I've said, that I was, and this person is saying that apparently they were. But what's missing in this whole comment? They don't see where I was coming from in the video, right? They don't understand that, no, I was talking about people with borderline personality disorder, not people with CPTSD, because that's not the same as BPD, and I wasn't talking about narcissists. So then I feel gaslit by the beginning. The word you're looking for is narcissist. No, it absolutely wasn't and isn't. So this is just for you to think about this commenter and that general use of you, meaning you. That you as a single listener, you, every single person that might listen to this. This person is saying, me and you and all of us, we just do all this to them and shame them and stigmatize them and put them in a shame box. What's missing in this? Yeah, right. Their side of the deal, right? Their side of how they act, react. Yes, didn't learn coping skills in childhood. Didn't get any love, so they don't know how to love, etc. Like I was talking about. It was the video I did, which is in the podcast too. Borderlines don't love you. Borderlines use you. They don't love you or attach to you. This person has totally gone down one side of a black and white presentation of when. This is what happens to these people. This is what happens to us. As if they have some like extra special victim thing with that allows them to act however the heck they want to. And even when they don't realize how they're hurting other people, no, I'm not here to put anybody in a shame box. I don't have that power anyway. Not my intention, not my goal. I'm not here to stigmatize BPD any more than it already is, but I'm here to point out exactly what this person did, which is all of what I've said so far and all of what they wrote does not acknowledge and the projection out of the black and white, the projection out of all you people, sorry your relationship didn't work out the way you wanted to with the borderline, but like you don't take any responsibility. Well, some people with codependency, like I said, need to step up to more personal responsibility, but not for what the borderline did. But this is a person on the other side, the narrative of BPD, who's saying nothing about their responsibility. So this is often an attitude among a lot of people with BPD, and especially untreated. Well, all this happened to me in my childhood. I didn't get any love. I didn't get any coping. I didn't learn how to cope. And I was so, abused. Okay, well, so was, I was too. And many people are, whether they have BPD or traits up like I did or not, or codependency. But the thing is, what do we need to do? We need, what did I do? I can always speak for myself. I went to therapy. I healed and I recovered a long time ago. And I've been living the rest of my life quite mentally healthy and trying to help others. And so that is the opposite of what people with BPD who aren't treated or well enough treated do, which is they just keep whining and complaining about, real pain, but then not understanding or not caring or not able to care about how they affect other people. They just don't get that side of it. So many of them don't get that side of it. I've had clients speaking to me over time and recently saying, well, but the person I was with BPD, even though it's not working out and they're in a lot of pain and there was a whole lot of other stuff that went wrong, a lot of clients will say, but they did say they were sorry after a lot and they seem to realize stuff after a lot. So let me just throw this in here at the end to say, and that and a dime won't even get you a cup of coffee. Because what am I saying? When they have intellectual awareness of something, that's a good step forward. It might take them 5, 8, 10, 12, 16 years in therapy, if they ever go to it, to really, really heal and be able to have a healthy relationship. So don't be hanging in there because you think they're oh so aware. Because clients who tell me that then go on to say the very next thing that follows that with most people. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years, so I a lot of the times know kind of where people are going to go from one sentence to the next. Not always, not verbatim, because everybody's an individual. But after they'll say, oh, but they're so aware. And then they said they're sorry. He or she said they're sorry. Well, yeah, that'll happen like a million times in a relationship, because the intellectual awareness or partial awareness that they have after an episode, but not during, that's not going to change no matter how much they can talk to you when it's not happening. Because when they're triggered and it's happening, it's still happening. Are you still there trying to help somebody with BPD because you think, oh, they're getting it? Oh, well, they can talk about it when it's not happening, so that must mean something. No, it's not really. It doesn't mean what you want it to mean. It doesn't mean what you desperately hope it means, because you want the relationship to somehow work out, even though nothing about it is working, or you're an ex now, and no matter how much you're still struggling, and you might still, I'm out here to work with people, if you resonate with me, you might still be having a really hard time. You might still be trauma bonded and confused and hurt and in cognitive dissonance and rumination and a whole bunch of like agonizing reality. But people sometimes still think, but will they change? Can I get them back? Will they come back? And a lot of that is really, people with codependency are doing that because it's all you know how to do to cope in those moments, because you don't know how to cope with the ways in which people with BPD hurt you, have treated you, and then often just rupture the relationship. They ghost, they come back, they ghost, or they just discard. Or at some point they ghost, they come back to Hoover's, whatever, and then eventually they discard. And not everybody with BPD discards, but that's when they ghost. The first rupture in the relationship. Maybe they cheated, maybe they emotionally cheated, maybe you found them on a dating app. Any of these kinds of things and more, that's when people need to break up. People need to say, no, like, does that fit with your values? Does it? Yeah. But there's lots of reasons why people can't break the betrayal or the trauma bond to just be able to get yourself out of there. And then it's really, really hard and painful, because in these relationships, people try to seek a lot of support sometimes online and everything, which I think is a double-edged sword. I think people should be really more careful about that, because even if 10,000 people say to you, oh, me too, bro, or me too, yeah, oh, I think we dated the same guy with BPD, or the same girl with BPD, same woman with BPD, whatever, that's only putting salve on your wounds, and it's not going to help you heal. The key thing to remember, like this is just a highlight, I think, of a comment that, the person first thought I'm just missing the word. I'm just misusing words. I really meant to say narcissist, they tell me. Oh, yeah, the word you're looking for is narcissist. Nope. I was talking about, as many people know I do and have been for 35 years online. Well, in April next year will be 35 years exactly. Yeah, I'm talking mostly about people with BPD. So anyway, this person projecting out a lot, feeling bad about themselves, thinking that I or all of us are shaming them or shaming people like them with BPD, when what they don't realize is they're carrying a ton of shame from unhealed childhood woundedness that's devastating, because it's about emotionally arrested self and a loss of self, even more so than in codependency. And these people don't get that all they fling out at me and or you, like in the general you part, they don't realize what they do at all. And so if you happen to be with somebody or on off with somebody with BPD, or you haven't broken the trauma bond and you're still thinking about somebody, even if it's like months, a year, 5 years later, people are stuck in these places of utter agony. Well, you need to know that even if they can talk to you about it, from the intellect later, after episode after episode, after not seeing you, after not reciprocating anything to you, after, like, no matter what you do for them, it's not good enough. Because when there's a split evaluation, you become the object of their parent representation, and that just means they're going to go at you, like, with all their core wounds and trauma, and as if you were or are in those moments the wounding parent. And there's no excuse for BPD abuse. And this person feels all the things that were put out at me and or others in the general sense of you. Am I putting millions of survivors of any kind of childhood adverse experience in some kind of a shame box or something, stigmatizing shame box, because I need a black and white understanding of reality and take no responsibility for No, I took responsibility for relationship stuff on both sides of this fence. And I think most people with codependency are working toward, if not now working through, taking their own responsibility for what they need to heal and how you got there and learning all about that. So this commenter, it's just so emblematic of how people with BPD communicate. And guess what? Didn't impress me much, didn't make much sense to me. And when you're in a relationship with somebody like that, they don't take any responsibility. They project everything onto you that they're doing is projected onto you. And then they cry victim. And they are everybody's victim until and unless they, in their heads, they're everybody's victim, I should clarify. Until and unless they go and seek treatment and stick with it instead of just this. I have compassion and empathy for anybody who was essayed in childhood, regardless of any diagnosis they may or may not have. That needs to be healed, and I work with clients in healing that as well. And I've been through that. So I have compassion and empathy for that. But you know what I don't have a lot of compassion or empathy for? People like this commenter who are not taking any of their own responsibility. People with BPD trying to say, oh, well, we don't have BPD really. We just have CPTSD. There's a whole boatload of that going on out there. Now there's a lot of people saying, well, I don't really have BPD. No, it's ADHD. I mean, come on. This is what they do. They'll do anything they can to escape their own personal responsibility that would help them get into the right treatment and most efficacious treatment and stay in it. But even then, you can't stay with them because it's a long-term process. And in the meantime, they aren't there as who you hoped they were or who you thought they were. They're not reciprocating to you. They're not being mutual with you. They're not loving you the way that you're trying to love them. They can't even take in your love. They can't even take in all the good things that you've done for them. Oh, maybe for 5 minutes or an hour here and there. But then when they get emotion dysregulated, triggered, they split to devaluation, and all of a sudden, all that stuff that you've done, and people have done so much for people with BPD in relationships, and the person's like, you never did anything for me. You never loved me. Oh, and by the way, you're a narcissist. Which almost every client I speak to now, almost all of them say that their borderline called them a narcissist. And, they're not narcissists. So anyway, this comment, I don't know what people think, but if you want to let me know what you think, soon there will be a way for podcast listeners to let me know what you think, because I'm going to be podcasting a lot more, doing a lot less YouTube, but I will be putting some of the podcasts up on YouTube. So if this one happens to hit the tube, then people could comment to it. And if you hear it on YouTube, then please let me know what you think, because this person started off the whole comment by gaslighting me. And that's the first thing I caught on to, and that's where I tuned out, actually. To this person's woe is me. Doesn't mean I don't have compassion and empathy for people who've been through a lot in childhood. But ladies and gentlemen, each and every single one of us, no matter what a diagnosis is or isn't, we need to take it to therapy, and we need to heal and move forward. Because remaining an eternal victim, as so many people with BPD do, and some people with codependency really severely, it's not the way to go through life. It's just a way to continually be rewounded and rewounded and rehurt and rehurt. And with people with BPD, that's their repetition compulsion cycles. That's why their relationships don't work out. And I actually, dare I say, got a little bit of a kick out of, I'm not enjoying the person's pain or wherever they're coming from, but I got a little bit of kick out of when they said, I'm sorry you had a bad relationship dating someone with borderline, but that doesn't give you the right to blah, 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 blah. Because we hurt more than you do. Because we're really come on, we didn't get any of our needs met. But nor do they realize that they're trying still to get all their childhood needs met through others. And they seek an identity through you. And it's not okay. It's not okay the way they treat, hurt, and turn other people's worlds upside down because that might have happened to them in childhood. Of all the compassion and empathy in the world for people with BPD who go through that emotional arrested development, don't get love, don't get taught coping skills, don't even get help with emotional regulation, lose themselves, etc. But people with BPD, and if you have codependency, please don't keep living where you've been living since your childhood and your woundedness, which is not the same as BPD. People with BPD and people with codependency, both in their own ways, need to get out of these trauma bonds, break them, get into healing recovery, and I'm going to have something coming soon about, and no, that doesn't mean you can get back together 10 years from now. And by the way, once you go through your healing recovery process, you won't ever have that thought again. But if you're thinking that now, it's just another way that people are trying to get out of their pain in the here and now, with people with codependency, trying to get out of the pain of the here and now by projecting into the future. Well, maybe he or she will go get help. Maybe I'll see them in the future, and maybe it'll just all be magically fine. But you have to do your work. But see, I'll just say quickly here, when people with BPD actually heal, like I did, like I know I did, and I'm going to have more coming on the difference between recovered and remission, and this claptrap of people with BPD can't be cured. Don't need a cure. That's not what the issue is. It's about healing and recovering and finding self and growing forward and building a container of self and learning all the things that people who have BPD didn't get to learn in childhood. So, yeah, I'll have more coming on those topics as well. But anything I say about BPD, like recovery versus remission, because I've got a question on the channel about that too. Whenever I answer these questions, please listen, because please listen in general if it helps you. But just know, I'm never, ever going to make a statement like a BPD apologist, ever. And too many people right now, I don't know if this is you or not, right? Check in with yourself. Too many people right now are, with codependency, being a BPD apologist for someone if you're not really working on yourself to get out of that relationship and go no contact and working in therapy to break the trauma bond. Too many people with codependency are still being BPD apologists. And what does that look like? It's when you minimize what's happening to you over and over and over and over again, even though it's harming you more, wounding you more, less tolerable, more crazy making, and you're losing you. It affects your mental health, emotional well-being, can affect your physical health. So, yeah, we have to thank this commenter. I hope something I said here was helpful. We'll thank the commenter if it was. And in the meantime, just a general note. I guess I will be putting this one up to YouTube. Just a general note for people that they want to comment on a podcast episode, or if I'm doing any more videos, I don't know, on YouTube. Spare me the gaslighting, okay? The word you were looking for is narcissist. No, it wasn't. So anyway, don't forget, if you're still involved with somebody with BPD, if it's on off, it's really bad, you just kind of can't let go, you're still in the trauma bond, remember, they are not emotionally adulted. They can't meet you where you want them to. You can't fix them. You can't rescue them. You can't change them. You need to get into your own healing recovery journey now. Out here to work with you if I resonate with you, and going to be doing a lot of podcast episodes on some of these really, some comments are really interesting. Some are like that one. Well, there was a lot to it really, but it starts off with like, what? Gaslighting me? And this other stuff. And this is the profile of somebody. It's what they will say when they are living their lives so sadly and tragically, usually without therapy or without enough therapy, as the eternal victims that they feel like from how much they really were hurt in their childhood. They were decimated, desecrated, had emotional arrested development, fragmentation off of the child ego state, not denying the horrific childhoods of many people with BPD, but many people with codependency had almost equally horrific childhoods. Not the same for everybody, but, And not everybody gets BPD from these types of childhoods. However, with that said, I have compassion and empathy for people who've been through that and for some of what this commenter said. But in the context of how it's presenting, the eternal BPD, I'm the biggest victim. I'm always the victim, says people with BPD untreated or not well enough treated. And therefore, they don't maybe consciously know this, but they would give this excuse. I didn't mean to hurt you. It doesn't matter how it treated you. What about me? That is essentially where people with BPD are stuck. And you need to recognize that if you haven't already, so that you can help yourself out.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.